Okay, so let's start with the remaining entry of Schedule 1. Okay, we have seen few entries on Saturday. Do you remember which are those entries? Schedule 1 activities will be still treated as supply, even those are without consideration. Which are those? First, permanent transfer or disposal of business asset when when input tax credit was earlier claimed. Second, related persons or distinct persons, even without consideration. And third one, supply between principal and agent. Also, we saw the concept of del creditor agent. Yes, right. So the last entry, that is para 4 of schedule 1, which is importation of services without consideration. Now, before I go to this entry, let me take you to the basic scope of supply, which we have already studied quite a few times. We have revised as well. So, do you remember section 7.1 clause A, B, and C? Yes. So what was clause B of section 7 subsection 1? Importation of services for a consideration whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Okay. So this entry was pertaining to the importation of services but for consideration. So what it means, whenever there is an importation of service for consideration, whether it is in the course of business or it is not in the course of business, does not matter. It is straightforward treated as supply of service. What is a little bit different thing here? In usual course, when there is a supply of service, it is the supplier who is liable to charge and pay tax. Here, it is the importer of the services, right? So somebody XYZ who is, let's say, in our original example of this entry, which we have seen, that I want to construct a villa. Okay, for that I hire a consultant who is situated at USA, and I'm paying him 50,000 US dollars for that particular service. And that villa is for my personal use, not for my business use. Still, it will be treated as importation of services, which is supply under section 7.1 clause B. Now, in this case, I am liable to pay tax. It is supply for me, but actually it is supply by whom? That contractor, that consultant in USA. But still here it is treated as supply in my hand, and I am liable to pay taxes on the importation of services. So do you understand the difference between a normal situation where the service provider is otherwise liable to pay tax? Here, the I being the service recipient, I am liable to pay tax. So do you understand the difference? Because we had not discussed about this particular aspect of this entry. So here the recipient who is situated inside the India, inside the country, and importing the services for consideration is paying tax, and the supply is in the hands of that importer, not in the hands of that person. Why it is so? The burden is shifted from that person to the recipient. Any logical reason that you can think of? Yes? Who is speaking? Supplier is out of India. So can we track him? Can we impose certain conditions on of him? He may be a citizen of India. He may not be a citizen of India. Most of the times he will be citizen of any other country than India, right? So the government definitely cannot trace, track, plot that particular person who is residing outside India, who is supplying the services in this case, and hence the recipient of the services, who is Indian citizen, who is having control over by the government of India, is made liable to pay tax being a importer of the services. Clear with the 7.1b logic? Now let's go to para 4 of schedule 1, and let us try to understand the difference between that importation of services and this importation of services, because both are importation of services. So you should be in a right position to understand which importation of services is to be categorized under which clause, whether it is para 4 of schedule 1 or 7.1 clause B. Okay, so first let us read this para 4 and then we will try to have a distinction between both the entries. So it says import of services by a person from a related person or from his establishment located outside India without consideration in the course or furtherance of business shall be treated as supply. So there are quite a few conditions which are required to be satisfied here. So what are those conditions? First is the services are supplied by the related person. We have seen what is a related person. There is a list of relationships which are covered by the related person's term, which also includes family, and family is also defined somewhere. So related persons means the list that we have studied, which is given in the explanation to section. Explanation to section. Which section? Just in the last lecture we have studied that relationship. All those list of relationship. A is the partner of B in partnership firm, A partnership firm. So both are related persons under GST. A is the director of PQR, P is the director of ABC. Both are related. We have seen that list, right? So that is given under which section? Reference. Explanation to section 15, valuation. Do you remember now? So importation of services by a person from a related person means the relationship which is defined in that explanation, or from his establishment located outside India. So let's say ABC Private Limited, it is a company in India and it is having a subsidiary or maybe a parent company in Singapore. So that is a establishment which is his related enterprise and which is located outside India. So again that will get covered here. Without consideration. We are studying the without consideration list only. So without consideration has to be there, right? In the course or furtherance of business shall be treated as supply. So how many conditions are there? 3 conditions. First, it is from a related person. Second, it is without consideration. And third, it is in the course or furtherance of business. So here, it is not written that whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. There, it is written as whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Sir, very confusing. Okay, so let's try to understand this para 4 versus 7.1b. Okay, so please try to remember, whenever the importation of services is for consideration, whenever the importation of services is for consideration, it will always be a supply. Try to remember it in this manner. So whenever there is a importation of services for consideration, I'm importing something. Okay, don't right now assess whether it is from a relative, whether it is for business or not. Am I paying for that services? If I'm paying for it, it is a supply for me. So I will be liable to pay taxes to the government. Though I am not supplying, I am receiving the supply. Here I am made liable to pay tax because it is supply in my hand. We'll see what is reverse charge mechanism, etc. At that time, we will understand how this concept works. But for time being, you understand that that person who is supplying services from outside India is not under the control of Indian government. So Indian government says, who is under my control? You, as a recipient of that particular importation of service. So you pay the tax. Clear? So whenever there is a for consideration, it will be supply. Whether it is for business, whether it is for non-business, whether it is from related, unrelated, doesn't matter. Just treat it as supply. Then come to without consideration area. Whenever there is importation of services without consideration, then you first check whether it is in the course or not in the course of business. If it is without consideration, but in the course or furtherance of business, then you check the second condition, whether it is from a related person, because relationship is compensated for consideration part. We have seen that. Okay, I sell something to my father and not receiving anything in return. Still we treat it as supply because relationship is compensated for that consideration. So first you check if it is if it is without consideration, then you check whether it is in the course or furtherance of business. If the answer is yes, then you check whether it is from a related person, treat it as supply. Otherwise, don't treat it. So you have to remember two things to simplify this. Whether it is for consideration, it is supply. The opposite of that, whether it is not for consideration, then you check two things. First, whether it is in the course or furtherance of business. If the answer is yes, check whether related person or not. If the answer is yes, it will be supply. In all other cases, it is not a supply. Means what? Means if it is without consideration, but not for the purpose of business, not in the course or furtherance of business, it will be still not a supply. If it is without consideration for a business purpose, but not from a related person, then will not be considered as supply. So rather than remembering all these entries, just remember two scenarios where it will be treated as supply. Whenever there is a consideration, always a supply. Whenever there is without consideration, check only two conditions. Whether in the course of business, answer is yes. Whether it is from related person, answer is yes, then it is a supply. Easy to remember now? Okay. Let's test whether it is really easy. Jhumru Associates received legal consultancy services from its head office located in Malaysia. The head office has rendered such services free of cost to its branch office. Think over this. Don't answer in hurry. Just think over this. Try to remember the thought process that we have just absorbed and then try to give the answer. Anyone? So everyone thinks that it is a supply? Would anyone like to reason out why? Yes. So first, it is without consideration. So first thing is that it is without consideration. Then how have you understood that it is in the course of furtherance of business? Because it is the company or the firm which is obtaining legal services. So it is presumed that it is in the course or furtherance of business. Then related person. So it will be covered as a supply under which entry now? We have seen two entries. One is 7(1)(b), second is para 4 of schedule 1. Which do you think is the entry which covers this? So let us read the answer. Since Jhumru Associates and the head office are related persons, services received by Jhumru Associates will qualify as supply even though the head office has not charged anything from it. So the answer is correct. Chakmak, a proprietor registered in Delhi, has sought architect services from his son located in US with respect to his newly constructed house in Delhi. Think over this and try to give the answer whether it is a supply or no supply with reasoning. if the information is not complete in the example, you have to make certain assumptions. That is the hint to answer this question. Yes, feel free to make assumptions. Not a supply or supply? Not a supply. Anyone wants to give the reason? Step by step you have to answer. Huh? Step by step, clear, as if you are writing the exam, the answer in the exam. Is first of all without consideration. How? So you have assumed that there is a transaction between father and son, so there is no consideration involved. That is what you are assuming. Okay. Next. Not in the course of business, right? Because it is a house wherein he will be staying between related person. So which conditions are satisfied? Which entry it will get covered under? Para 4 of schedule 1. Okay, let's see the answer. Although services have been received by Chakmak without consideration from his son, a related person, yet it will not qualify as supply since the same has not been received in the course or furtherance of business. So, with that, we have completed schedule 1 of the CGST Act 2017. So, from which perspective schedule 1 is important? Why do we study schedule 1? What are the entries covered in it? Whether it is covered by schedule 1 or not? Basic question. Yes. Little louder. It is one of the exceptions to the parameters. So basic intention to go to schedule 1 would be classification of something under the head of supply, whether it is taxable or not, right? So as rightly said, that it is one of the exceptions to the parameters which is for consideration, and hence we need to understand and have the complete information about what is schedule 1. So similarly we have schedule 3, right? Where have we read about it? In section 7 particularly. 7 1 1A 7 2. I've got three answers. One says 7 1C, someone says 7 2, and someone says 7 3. Which is the correct answer? 7 2 clause A. Are you sure? Or you want me to take you there again? 7 2. This is schedule 3, activities or transactions which shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor as supply of services. 7 2. So, what does section 2 says? So, notwithstanding anything contained means irrespective of anything that we have studied earlier, means these parameters and everything, certain activities or transactions constitute a supply in accordance with the provisions of subsection 1. They shall be treated as either supply of goods or services or supply of services that is covered in schedule 2, but I have changed the sequence a little bit and I have directly gone to schedule 3. So that is covered by section 2, as rightly pointed out by some of you, that certain activities will be neither treated as supply of goods nor it will be treated as supply of services. Why I have changed it? Because I want you to understand few concepts before we go to schedule 2, which talks about which are treated as supply of goods and which are treated as supply of services. So instead of 7.1a, 7.1.1a, we have gone directly to 7.2, which is again divided into two parts actually, but the main part of it is part A, which is talking about schedule 3. There are list of activities which will be neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. Now I want all of you to give me at least one example of this, because we have discussed few examples when we actually read this particular clause. Yes? Money. What is the activity in money? Yes, I agree to that part. It is neither supply of goods nor supply of services, but it is not about supply. It is neither goods nor services. Means there is no question of going to the definition of supply only. It is neither covered by the definition of goods nor covered by definition of services. Here, schedule 3. Okay, so this raises a very good doubt, or probably I never thought of this doubt coming to your minds. So there may be some things which are neither goods nor services. Okay, so that may not be covered by the definition of goods nor the definition of services. So those are outside the purview. But there may be either goods or services in usual context covered by the definition and still will not be treated as supply. So schedule 3 talks about those activities, which is in a way it is supply of goods or services, but because schedule 3 specifically categorize them as neither supply of goods nor supply of services, it will remain outside the purview of supply. Okay, so that is the important thing that you need to understand. So let us go to that schedule 3 and try to understand which are the activities which are covered by schedule 3. Activities or transactions which shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor supply of services, schedule 3. In service tax regime, means pre-GST regime, it was called as negative list. In GST regime, it is called as schedule 3. But yes, just for referencing purpose, we have given it as a negative list. You may call it as a negative list, but it is neither supply of goods nor of supply of services. We have seen the example of employer and employee, isn't it? So services by an employee to the employer in the course or in relation to his employment. In usual parlance, it is a service which employee is giving. So it may be covered by the definition of service. Now, your question, right? So it may be covered by the definition of service, but here, this entry number 1 of schedule 3 specifically categorize it as neither supply of goods nor supply of service, and hence it is outside the purview of taxability. Now you understand the difference between money and this entry or any of the entry. Okay. Second is services by any court or tribunal established under any law for the time being in course. So which is this tribunal? There are arbitration tribunal also, and there are normal these tribunals also. So they are talking about the usual tribunal. So what are arbitral tribunals? So two persons enter into a contract, A and B, and they decide that if any dispute arises in future, we will settle it through arbitration. So they go to so it is a baby of a contract. And these are the tribunals which are established under a law. Okay, so if tomorrow someone receives notice under GST law, let's say section 73 or 74 of the CGST Act, and he represents before the authorities against that notice, or his chartered accountant, then the order is passed which is not in favor of the taxpayer. So taxpayer who is agreed with the order which is passed by the tax authority goes into appeal. So appeal is again the natural justice is established and an opportunity is being given to that person to represent his case. So through his lawyer or a chartered accountant, he represents his case, puts all the facts and law points before the tax authorities, appellate authorities, but the appellate authority does not agree to whatever he is saying. Still the order is passed which is not in favor of the taxpayer. So assessment level gone, first level appeal gone. Now they have to apply to the appeal to the tribunals. So tribunal is the second uh, level or hierarchy of the justice. Right now under GST, tribunals are not yet formed. So we have to wait up till the tribunals are formed. So maybe in this coming financial year, it will be formed. That is what the finance ministry is saying as of now. But right now, those are not in place. So what happens if tribunal also give the order which is not in favor of the taxpayer? Taxpayer has to go to appeal with High Court of that state. And then if High Court also rejects, dismisses, then Supreme Court. So that is the level of hierarchy that we have. So any services by any court or a tribunal established under any law for the time being in course. So those tribunal, courts are in a way providing service. In a way, those are providing service to the taxpayer or the person who is aggrieved by the order, whoever is representing. So those all services, tomorrow government will go to them and tell them that pay tax on whatever services that you have provided. So that should not happen. For that purpose, they have kept it outside the purview by entering this as an entry in schedule number 3. Clear? Functions performed by members of parliament. So services given by Mr. Narendra Modi or Mr. Rahul Gandhi, being a member of parliament, they will not be liable to pay tax because it is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. State legislature, panchayat, municipalities, local authorities, duties by person holding constitutional posts. One example of constitutional posts, C and AG, Comptroller of Auditor General, Comptroller and Auditor General, C and AG, Governor, etc. Those are posts, persons holding constitutional posts, right? Then duties performed by any person as a chairperson or a member or a director in a body established by the central or a state government or a local authority. So all these activities are neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. And then services of funeral, burial, crematorium, and mortuary, including transportation of the deceased. So all those services are thankfully kept out of the purview of GST. So funnily, we say that uh, if you are born, there is no GST. As a joke, we say that. If you are born, there is no GST because medical services are exempt, kept outside the purview. If you are dead because of this entry, if you are dead, there is no GST. In between, everything is under GST. That is what we say as a joke. But yes, easy to keep in mind that medical services are exempt. We'll go to, whenever we'll go to exemptions, we will study that entry. And this entry, for time being, you can understand that it is neither supply of goods nor supply of services. So services by funeral, burial, crematory, etc. are outside the purview of GST because it is covered by Schedule 3. Then sale of land, subject to paragraph 5B of Schedule 2, sale of building. Means what? Sale of land means pure land, plain land that you understand, agricultural land, non-agricultural land, whatever, piece of land. Easy? Anything to explain in this area? Subject to para 5B of Schedule 2, sale of building. Now let us try to understand this concept. This is a little bit, maybe a little bit new for all of you. Okay. So let's take an example of a residential building So there is a builder who is constructing a residential complex, and there are buyers. I mean, proposed buyers. They have just come today to see the sample flat, etc. Sample flat is ready. Excuse my drawing. So all of them come to see the sample flat. Some of them like the sample flat. So let's say A likes the sample flat. So the building is let's say total it has 15 floors, and it is under construction. It is not completed. Okay, just first slab or second slab is done. So it is under construction. So A comes and says, I like the flat. I want to buy the flat, any of the flat, whichever he has liked. So the builder says, okay, so what you do is you pay some advance, and as and when we'll do some agreement to sell. Agreement to sell is the first step. So that is that is where the builder and the flat buyer agree on certain terms, that consideration will be paid in this manner, construction will be done in this manner, possession will be given after 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is. So all those are agreed in this agreement to sell, and against that, let's say 5 lakhs are paid as an advance, and then in future installments he is going to pay for the flat. So this is year 2022. The building gets constructed in 2024. So this person, Mr. A, has paid at least 1 rupee before the completion. Completion certificate has come in 2024. So you from the understanding perspective, that at least some consideration is paid before the completion certificate. Let's say all nine, this is a 1 CR flat. This is 1 CR flat, 5 lakhs paid now, and maybe in 24, 95 CR are paid, 95 lakhs are paid. Okay. So as per GST law, it will be supply of service. As per GST provisions, there are various provisions combined together say that this will be treated as supply of service and liable to be charged under GST. So there will be tax on which amount? Entire 1 CR. On this 5 lakhs also, on this 95 lakhs. Mr. B comes, he also likes the flat. He pays 1 CR. He is a big shot. So he says, take this money, 1 CR. I'm booking it right now, full payment. Whenever you are constructing, completing, give the flat to me afterwards. So tax will be, that is also supply of service under GST, because before completion, either some or entire amount is paid to the supplier. Clear? So this is taxable. This is also taxable in entirety. But C says, okay, so this is a good flat, but if I pay GST on this, it is not going to help me, because I am not in any way eligible to input tax credit, because he's the consumer. Na? Does consumer have any benefit of input tax credit? No, it is a cost to him. It is going from his pocket. So he says, okay, let me just go to my consultant. So he goes to consultant. Consultant says that don't pay a single rupee until completion certificate is given to the building. So he waits till 2024, and the day builder gets completion certificate, he pays the entire 1 CR rupees. Till the time in 2 years he saves the amount, earns on that. The 1 CR he pays to the builder. So entire money in this case is given post completion certificate. So it is as good as the builder is not providing the service but selling an immovable property to him, and hence it will be kept outside the purview of GST because it is covered by this entry. Sale of land, that is okay, but subject to para 5B of schedule 2, sale of building or sale of unit of a flat or sale of a commercial or sale of a residential, whatever it is. So when I say that subject to para 5B of schedule 2, sale of building, means sale of building post completion certificate. Had it been a case, that C would have paid 1 rupee as an advance on the day he saw the flat and 99,99,999 rupees in 2024, is it supply of service or not? It is supply of service. Now you understood the difference. If you have not, I will repeat the example because this is very important. And huge number of litigations are currently going on this issue, practically. Not specifically to this issue, but there are various sub-issues, small intricacies. So have you understood this case? In case of sale of flat, simple example you keep in mind, sale of flat, real estate. In that case, before completion of the property means either it is certified by, who gives the completion certificate? If it is in municipal corporation, then municipal corporation gives the certificate. If it is in town planning, then town planning authority gives the certificate. If it is in maybe village area, then probably the authorities which are there, maybe, I don't know, Gram Panchayat or whoever it is, who is authorized to give the completion certificate will give it. Or a certified engineer who is approved by the government will give the completion certificate. So if the entire consideration is received post completion by an approved authority, then only it will be kept outside the purview, means it will be covered under this entry. This entry says it will be neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. So how to remember this? If entire consideration is received post the completion of the property, then it will be an entry of Schedule 3 and hence there will be no GST. If some of it is received before completion, the entire consideration will be covered by para 5B of the Schedule 2 and will be treated as service. Why I am referring to Schedule 2? What does Schedule 2 say? What will constitute a supply of goods? What will constitute a supply of services? So 5B para of Schedule 2 says, whenever there is consideration which is received before the completion certificate, then it will be treated as supply of service. And hence it will not get covered by this entry, Schedule 3. It will be Schedule 2 entry, supply of service, liable to charge in entirety. Clear? Understood? Right? Actionable claims other than lottery, betting and gambling. Who will explain this? We have discussed this. At length we have discussed. Speak up. What is an actionable claim? What is an actionable claim? Correct. So claims for which legal action can be enforceable in the courts of law. Which examples have we seen? Negotiable instruments we have seen. Those are all examples of actionable claim, bill of exchange, etc. We have seen another example of actionable claim, lottery, betting, gambling. If we have a ticket and my number matches, do you remember the discussion we had when we discussed goods definition, services definition? So if I have a lottery ticket, if the number matches and the lottery company refuses to pay me, am I not going to take an legal action against that? Is it protected by the law? The answer is yes, it is an actionable claim. So when did we discuss this actionable claim? When we discussed the definition of goods. So goods include actionable claim, isn't it? That time I told you that why this actionable claim is included under the definition of goods. So the reason was to tax which one? Lottery, करेक्ट, लॉटरी, बेटिंग एंड गैमलिंग. सो शेड्यूल 3 का क्या रेफरेंस है इसमें? शेड्यूल 3 क्या कहता है कि actionable claims other than lottery, betting, gambling are excluded from the definition, from the supply of goods and supply of services. Means lottery, betting, gambling is supply of goods. Clear? So all other actionable claims are outside the purview of. So clear with schedule 3? It was very, very simple, isn't it? Isn't it? Let's quickly revise schedule 3. Services by an employee to the employer in the course or in relation to his employment. We have seen this also. We have discussed that schedule 1 example, gift, that also we discussed, right? So whatever is covered by the terms of the engagement as an employee, means employment contract, if those services are performed by the employee for certain payments, then those are neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. Meaning the employees are not required to obtain registration, etc., charge GST on the salary amount, etc., and that is kept outside the purview of GST. If this entry would not have been there, then every employees, all of the employees who are working in any organization and who are earning more than, let's say, 20 lakhs would be required to take registration, charge GST to the employer on the salary that they are receiving, etc. So that is a very illogical kind of a scenario, is kept outside the purview of GST. Services by any court, tribunal established under any law for timing in force. We have seen this. Courts, high courts, any courts, tribunals, etc. Whatever services they are providing is neither considered a supply of goods nor supply of services. Functions performed by MPs, state legislature, panchayat, municipality, local authority, duties by a person holding constitutional posts such as C&AG, governor, etc. Duties by a person, duties performed by any person as a chairperson or a member or director of body established under central government. Actually, this entry doesn't make any difference. Are there any services which are provided by all these people? Isn't it? So anyway, services of funeral, burial, crematory, etc., those are all are excluded. Sale of land and sale of building, but for that one condition is there: entire consideration is received after the completion. Okay? And actionable claims other than lottery, betting, gambling. So let's see what you have understood. Amounts received by an employee from the employer on premature termination of a contract. It's not notice period, it is a premature termination of the contract. Means the employer is terminating the services of employee before the end of the term. So whether it is, the answer to this is yes, whether it is treated as amounts paid in the relation to services in the course of employment, still it will be treated as, because the term is terminated by the employer. Okay? Then services provided by casual worker to employer who gives wages on daily basis to the workers. May it be daily wages, any periodicity may be there, but it will be still treated as under the terms of employment. Casual workers employed by a construction contractor for execution of building contract for him still will be treated as under the engagement. So ultimately outside the purview of GST, right? Because once the employer-employee relationship is established, maybe a casual worker, maybe a contractual employee, etc., all are covered by the engagement as a employment. Then casual workers employed by a security services agency for provision of security services to a client. So there is one company appoints one security agency, and security agency has employed some employees for providing security services. So that services is given. Whether there is a employer-employee relationship that exists, the answer is still yes. So these are the clarifications which we already have. So please keep this in mind. And then services provided by a contract based by a person to another, principal to principal basis. So the example may be a chartered accountant is retained by a company who comes every month, prepares some scrutiny assessment etc of that organization's accounting, and gives MIS to the client every year, every month. So that is a retainership based services provided by that chartered accountant to that company. So whether there is a employer employee kind of a relationship, the answer is no. It is principal to principal basis contract. That chartered accountant does not become an employee just because he is coming there every month or periodically and rendering certain services. There is a contract between them which says that you will come every month, scrutinize the books of accounts, prepare the MIS, and will deliver. So he may decide the course of action, etc. So it is not treated as not as an employee. So it will come under the purview of GST. Why? Because it is not falling under that first entry of Schedule 3, which talks about employer-employee relationship. Any amount paid by employer to employee for not joining competing business. What is this? We have discussed this or not? We have seen act or forbearance. We have seen the example of technical Guruji, iPhone example we have seen. So what was the money given for? Not telling bad things. So it was a forbearance, acting or forbearance to act something. So here it is similar, no? An amount paid to by the employer to employee for not joining a competitive business. So amount paid for not performing certain act, is it under the contract of employment? The answer is no. So is it covered by Schedule 1, Para 1? No, it will be treated as supply and hence will be chargeable to GST. So clear? This is paid for providing the services for forbearance to act and cannot be considered for providing services in the course of employment. So it is not in the course of employment. Now we have 7.2b. What does it say? Schedule 3 and there is another part B. Correct. So government is empowered to notify the activities or transactions undertaken by central or state government or local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities as activities and transactions which shall not be treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. So if you see 7.2, then it has two categories. One is Schedule 3, the list of which we have just seen, the entries like employer, employee, tribunal, court, etc. And the second part says where the services are given by governmental authorities, where they are authorized to provide those services as a public authorities. Okay. So under which there is a notification which is 25/2019 dated 30th September 2019. What does it say? So there are alcoholic liquor shops. In most of the states, that liquor can only be sold under specific regulations and set of rules. So there have to be specified shops for it. The seller has to obtain license to sell that liquor, etc. So there is a strict rules which are governing this particular sale of liquor for human consumption. So what usually happens is that that license which is taken up by the liquor shop owners is expensive one. The amount runs into lakhs of rupees to obtain that license. So the liquor shop owners would have to pay GST along with that amount, because it would otherwise would be treated as supply of service. License fees is a service, right? So to remove that aspect from this particular area, they have kept this through 7.2b outside the purview of supply. So what they say, that supply by way of grant of alcoholic liquor license means license to sell liquor in the liquor shops For that, whatever fees are paid as license fees, those are kept outside the purview of supply of goods or services. So it is license fees against means against consideration in the form of license fees for application fee or by whatever name called. So different states may have different nomenclature for those license fees, but definitely they charge some amount to give the license to sell liquor. Maybe different licenses are there. So that is treated as neither supply of goods nor supply of services. So clear? Equally important to schedule 3, because those are the clarifications which are given under section 7.2b. So they will take this case study a little later. Before that, we will cover this also. This is another clarification given through circular. A small one, will take this up. So let's take one example. I have a factory in Maharashtra, and I supply the goods to the state of Tamil Nadu. Okay, so and this is branch 1, this is branch 2. Same branch of the same entity, 2 different branches in 2 different states. So there will be one registration, and this is will be another registration, because states are different. This much you know. So the goods are moving in a truck. So whenever the goods are unloaded here, the truck is again returning back. Now some tax authorities might say that this is branch 1, this is branch 2. So you are distinct persons. So not only you are moving goods from point A to point B, that is Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu, but you are also supplying truck. So, but you are not charging any consideration. So it is schedule 1, you pay GST on that. Tax authorities will say that. Tax authorities might stretch the meaning of the non-consideration to this level and say that you pay tax. So this Maharashtra person says, no sir, but the truck is going and coming back. So coming back, very nice. So they say that this coming back without consideration will also be considered as another supply. So he will call Tamil Nadu person, tax authorities, and say that I will collect tax on this from Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu, you collect tax on Tamil Nadu to Maharashtra. But the taxpayer says, sir, this happens daily. It is not that daily, very good. So 300 days, working days, into whatever the amount, you pay tax on that amount. So the meaning of that supply of service or maybe whatever without consideration should not be stretched to this extent that they will also charge tax on the truck transfer, etc., vehicle transfer. Truck is an example that I'm giving, but there are various means through which it can be done. So they have issued this circular which says interstate movement of various modes of conveyance between distinct persons, including train, bus, truck, tanker, trailer, vessel, container, aircraft, whatever it is, carrying goods or passengers or both, or for repairs and maintenance, shall be treated as neither supply of goods nor supply of service. Clear? So they have clarified so that the meaning cannot be stretched to an extent where that they start collecting tax on every single thing. And therefore not be leviable to IGST except in cases where such movement is for further supply of the same conveyance. Means maybe the truck dealer is transferring from Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu for selling the truck itself. Then it will be covered. But when it is for transportation purpose, it will not be considered as supply. Clear? So this is another clarification that has been given. Now let us take this case study. Have you understood that 2 exceptions? One is for liquor license, the same is, and the another is clarification which is given through circular, which talks about the transportation through any means of transportation. Clear? Whether GST shall be levied on the services of display of name or placing of nameplates of the donor in the premises of charitable organization receiving donations, gifts from individual donors. What do you think? Don't read the answer. Just try to absorb the concept that you are a donor to some charitable institute and you walk into the office of that charitable institute or the premises and you see a list of donors in which your name is written, whether it is a supply, whether there should be GST. Now, in real life terms, the answers cannot be straightforward yes or no. We have to investigate the facts. We have to see what happens, what is the, because a minute fact may change the case when we are fighting cases in the courts of law. So you need to actually see that whether the display of name is just, in terms of gratitude, as they have displayed all the names of all the donors, in that there is a name. But you, let's say you are Patanjali and you donate to that charitable trust 5 crores. And once you go to the charitable institute, what you see is every corner of that charitable institute's premises, there is one hoarding of Patanjali, maybe oil, Patanjali atta, Patanjali whatever, the another few products are there. So there is kind of an advertisement. So you need to see the difference between these two scenarios. One is a genuine gratitude which is displayed, wherein it is same for all the donors. And another thing which can be distinguished from mere gratitude, that they are actually trying to publish or advertise in such a manner that there is a publicity given to those products. So if that is the case, then it will be a supply. But if it is mere donation, then it won't be. So what we have to write as an answer: GST shall not be levied if all the following conditions are satisfied. Which are these conditions? Gift or donation is made to a charitable institution organization. The payment has a character of donation or gift. So there is no obligation on part of the recipient of donation to do anything. So I will donate and you will set up my holdings in your premises. No obligation can be placed. It has to be a pure donation. Okay. Name is displayed in a manner which can be said to be expression of gratitude and public recognition of donors act of a philanthropy, and is not aimed of giving any publicity. This is very, very important. Not aimed at giving publicity to the donor in such a manner that it would be advertisement or a promotion. Clear? So whenever the donations are given, why do we think that whether it is a supply or not? Because there is a consideration. So we need to see whether there is a reciprocal services which are given. So if the name, if the holdings etc. are displayed in a manner, it is an advertisement services. So it will be definitely levied under GST. But if there is just a display of name in the list of donors, sometimes you go to educational institutes, they display a list of their donors. So it is an act of gratitude by the college. It is not that if I give you 5 lakhs donation, you put my name there and then you write which products I sell. So there is a little bit of advertisement of my company. It is not like that. So try to understand the difference. Facts would be different in different case. We have to take a decision based on that. So what you are supposed to write in the examination are these 3 things. One is it is a gift or donation to a charitable institute. The donation is without any condition or a reciprocal benefit attached to it. And third is it should not be aimed at giving any publicity or a promotional activity should not be there as a part of the services. If those 3 conditions are satisfied, then the gift would not be liable to be charged under GST. Otherwise, it will be a taxable supply of services. Clear? Should we stop for today? Right? Or you want me to start the new concept of composite and mixed supply? We have 2 things, schedule 2 and composite and mixed supply. Both cannot be completed today. It's 9 already, so we'll stop. So what you do is please revise these points, because tomorrow if we start with schedule 2, then you should, the things which we have studied in schedule 1 and schedule 3 should be clear to you. Okay, so please revise schedule 1, schedule 3, both activities without consideration to be treated as supply, and activities which will be neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of services. So that we will see schedule 2 tomorrow, which says which activity should be treated as supply of goods and which should be treated as supply of services. Okay, thank you.